Hello, and thank you for joining our overview of Alchemy Catalyst 10.0. This is a presentation that we first did at the London Science Museum, where we launched Alchemy Catalyst 10.0 at the user conference. That was May 2012, and if I can, I would recommend the venue. We had a fantastic day. We even joined simulators to fly along with the red arrows and to go and visit the moon. We had a fantastic day. But back to what we want to talk about today. This is Alchemy Catalyst 10.0. Catalyst is an integrated localization solution provided by Alchemy Software Development. Alchemy Software Development is a TransPerfect company. TransPerfect is a localization service provider with over 70 locations worldwide, processing about 120,000 projects a year. With the certification to ISO and EN standards, it's really one of the leaders in the provision of localization services. What we're interested in today is less about the services, more about the technology portfolio. TransPerfect have technology spanning workflow, translation memory, terminology management, content authoring, translating of course, and localization. Two main suites, two main brands covering those that span of technology are the Alchemy suite and the GlobalLink suite of products. Today we're going to talk about Alchemy, and the way we view the world is that we split the industry into three segments. Really, anywhere that software is being produced, any industry, be that finance and legal, travel and tourism, manufacturing, life sciences, typically automotive or electronics industry, for example, these are all industries that would produce a lot of software, specifically for a multilingual audience, and so would use Catalyst to localize that content. In addition to the producers of the software, there's also the service providers who would perhaps manage the localization and translation of that content, and that spans various degrees of provider, from multi-language vendors to single language vendors to perhaps agencies that just perform the engineering or the project management. And of course, the real work happens at the linguistic side, where the actual translations are entered. Translators come in various guises, from academic to government institutions, and of course a large cohort of professional translators. Catalyst then has an edition that is tailored for each of these users, from developer to localizer to the Translator Pro product. Client sample is going to be a who's who of companies generating software. So Apple, AOL, Citrix, F-Secure, really any company who is producing software that for a multilingual audience will use Catalyst to help localize that content. The Alchemy brand has a significant track record. We're talking today about Alchemy Catalyst 10.0, which has over 25,000 registered users worldwide. A sister product to Catalyst, of course, is Alchemy Publisher. Catalyst is typically for software content, Publisher more about the documentation formats. And between the two sits our enterprise translation memory solution called Language Exchange. They sit together in the following format. So typically though there are overlaps, typically we will talk about Alchemy Catalyst when users are asking about user interface content. So if there is software user interface, or be that from programming environments or any kind of software, typically Catalyst will be used. Publisher can be used for user assistance material such as publications or brochures. At the back end then we have Language Exchange, which is the translation memory that will allow will allow translations from either side of that fence to be used with the other, significantly improving the return on investment of either of those products. So Catalyst itself then is an integrated localization environment, and what we mean by that is that it has features that span the various stages of a localization project: the development community, the project management, the engineering, the linguistics, and of course the QA. All will find a host of features within the Catalyst product to solve daily tasks that they encounter. Those teams could be located in the same together in one site, or typically across localization these will be distributed teams across the world. And Catalyst is required to facilitate rapid translation, and that's really what it's all about, whether that's for software, for help, for web content, for mobile application. Whatever the content is, the various people involved in localization will find a solution in Catalyst. And what's most important for our users, especially when you're talking about software and intellectual property and source code, that we have a very secure editing environment where parsing is very accurate, and pieces of content that should not be translated or should not be accessible to the wrong eyes or users is very well protected. So really, from a parsing point of view, whatever the file format you need to translate, you've got a single localization process through Catalyst that will do that. Your file formats go into Catalyst, you translate, you validate, you perform translation memory, you perhaps perform some machine translation. Whatever the localization tasks you are required to do, you can do within Catalyst, and then generate your localized versions of web, software, mobile devices, embedded software, help content, etc. Now, when we were thinking about Catalyst 10, what we looked at was some of the changes in the industry. And really what we're seeing is just an explosion of content. There's just more and more content, which from a localization point of view just means more and more localization. A lot of this will be social media. If we think about Skype, this image is from goglobe.com, but we have about, in any given 60-second period, the analysis is saying that you might find from a Twitter point of view, about 98,000 tweets, a whole host of new LinkedIn accounts, Flickr images. What else do we have here? 168 million emails, 60 plus new blogs any second, a lot of new video content, iPhone applications, etc. Really a large volume of new content, which all means a large volume of new localization. So our design goals were set against that backdrop, and what we heard people talk about when we asked them was that they were being asked to do larger projects, more projects with more languages, and perhaps do that with less people, or certainly no more people. Which meant, of course, scalability and automation. We needed to be able to automate more and more to ensure people could achieve these objectives, could achieve more projects, larger projects in a reduced time. So we need rapid time to market. To facilitate that, we need to have very fast, reliable engineering. We need to be able to automate as much of the process as we can. And of course, all of that increase in volume and reduced time to market places pressure on quality. So we wanted to make sure that we could achieve those goals without sacrificing quality. So we wanted consistency of linguistics in a scaled up environment. We also needed a lot of flexibility with our validation and testing. How can people examine the content in a way that makes sense for them? In addition, we found that people were coming to us with some with what seemed like very similar requests. So they might have one person might ask about their parsing for one file format, and somebody else a couple of months later asks about the same thing. Now, it would be nice, having answered the first person, that everybody could avail of that information. So what we've built into the product now is the ability to share knowledge, and that is that the product can benefit from the industry's experience. Okay, so we look at how that happens. And with any edition of Catalyst, we're going for more and more file formats. We really are looking to make sure that you've got complete cover. Whatever the software formats you're dealing with, you have a localization solution within the Catalyst world. Okay, so combating those design goals, the following are the feature highlights that have been added to Catalyst 10. So from a scalability point of view, we have a new expert called the Project Division Expert, which automates the subdivision of large projects for smaller into smaller chunks, so that they can be perhaps worked on in parallel, meaning that many people can work on a project, getting it completed in a shorter space of time. The update expert is something that, again, from a scalability point of view, we wanted to be able to handle an agility. We want to be able to achieve an agility for an agile localization paradigm. And really, this is where, in an iterative cycle, where change is happening on a frequent basis, that the localization tools can respond. We'll have a look at the update expert in a moment. Term harvesting is a very exciting feature in this latest release of Catalyst. Catalyst is excellent at being aware, I guess, of terminology. It localizes software user interfaces, so it's best placed to identify terminology candidates. We wanted to be able to allow the flexibility of validation that will ensure consistency and quality, and to that end we've opened up completely the validation area, meaning that users can define their own validation tests within the product. From an engineering point of view, from a reliable and fast engineering point of view, we wanted the ability to automate the locking of pieces of text. So be that full segments, we can automatically identify segments that need to be locked, or if they are sub-segments, so pieces of text within a larger segment, keywords we call them, and they can also be automatically protected. Search within this release of Catalyst has been significantly enhanced. We can do refined searching, we can search by ID, search memos, etc. A significant improvement there. Machine translation is now at the core of the product. We can talk to any machine translation engine, but significantly in this release it can be automated. So we have the ability to machine translate entire content, large volumes of content. Of course, marking those segments that have been translated by machine, so that they can be post-edited or they can be treated differently post-MT. Okay, visual context is very important in a Catalyst world, and to that end we've added context links, so any segment can now be given an image, which really improves the quality for the linguist. There's no ambiguity, or at least ambiguity can be removed for segments where it's unsure what they're related to. An image can be added to clarify that. We talked about knowledge sharing and how one person's knowledge can benefit all of the users. Well, this is done through our cloud services. Catalyst 10 now talks to the cloud and identifies certain validation or certain pseudo-translation areas or parsing. Things that are configurable within the product can now be hosted in the cloud, and Catalyst can talk to these services and bring down new components to the product, meaning that we're all advancing from we're moving forward from an more advanced position. Rather than always starting at the baseline, we're always starting ahead of where we were. Okay, there are a number of other features there that we will also look at as the presentation goes along. Okay, just in a little bit more detail then, the project division. From a scalability point of view, how does the division work? What we want to do is to divide large projects into smaller chunks, but we need to maintain full context. Catalyst's job as the premier software user interface solution is to always provide context. Where we can, we make sure that people can see perhaps visually some of the content they're working on, or certainly they can see the content in context. So when we spoke to linguists about this division feature, they were very concerned about loss of context. If we take some segments and put them into file 1 and some other segments and put them into file 2, perhaps they're related. Well, this feature doesn't break the context. In fact, all segments remain in each of the sub-projects. However, they're marked for editing for within one file or the second file or the third file, whichever, wherever they've been assigned. Only that person will be able to edit them. Others will be able to see them for reference purposes, meaning full visual is maintained and full context is maintained. The Update Expert is designed to support the agile process. So rather than focusing on the iterative processes of design, code and test, design, code, test, we want to ensure that localization is inserted in there. So design, code, localize, test, design, code, localize, test. However, to facilitate that, we need a facility that will ensure that changes in development and changes during translation are kept synchronized. The Update Expert is designed to do just that, and if a change happens to any one file within our large project, I have a large project here in the screenshot, one of those files has changed in development, I can just identify that single file and update that, meaning that changes from dev are pulled in, but the changes during localization are maintained. With a view to increasing the quality, we are talking about terminology management here. The term harvest I mentioned is an excellent feature, especially in the Catalyst world. So Catalyst, by its nature of localizing software user interface, is rich in term candidates. Catalyst projects contain a lot of term candidates. Of course they contain a lot of noise words or noise segments that are not terms, and the job of this term expert is to automate the extraction of terms. Okay. In addition to that, we have a whole term manager plugged into the system now, such that terminology can be hosted online and made available to any project, any user around the world. If we look at the term harvest, this is the user interface that we will have. Essentially, Catalyst identifies the terms and presents some usage statistics about those terms. So in this case, we can see that for example, the word enabled towards the middle of the screen there is used 4 times, which suggests it's a high likelihood of being a term. Okay, I can see the source, I can see the target, and you can see from this kind of an interface that Catalyst can very, very quickly and very accurately identify terms and generate an accurate term base. Term bases can be in TBX, the industry standard for term base, or CSV indeed. Can go into Excel if a post process may be required. Still talking about quality and ensuring that the quality is not sacrificed in this world of larger volumes and quicker times to market, we have enhanced significantly the validation expert. There are 3 new tests which are user defined, if you like. So we have a number of predefined tests, but these 3 new tests essentially mean that there's no limit to the tests that can be performed during a localization project. The 3 tests will allow the users to check consistency of certain patterns between source and target. Let's say a telephone number or an IP address needs to remain consistent, or a HTTP URL. If there's something in the source that you wish to have in the target, you can define it yourself. That's the consistency check. The correct translation check, perhaps something like a decimal separator. If there is a number in English, perhaps for European languages the decimal separator needs to go to a comma. Things like that are very simple to define and very simple to check for in Catalyst 10.0. There's also a very nice feature that can identify invalid text. So we could not define all of the invalid terms for all our users. They are very much project specific or company specific. For example, we might have an old feature name or an old company name, and if that remains within a localized project, it could be an invalid localization. These things can be defined and tested very, very simply. Here's the user interface that defines a consistent pattern. What it's saying is that numeric variables within the curly bracket need to be consistent. So if I have something in the curly bracket in my source, I must have the same thing in my target. And you can see down at the bottom here that we can essentially test out our work. As we're defining a pattern, we can validate that it does what we want. So I've typed in a piece of original text there with a curly bracket number 1, and because that's also in the target, I get the green tick mark on the right hand side. If I had neglected to include the numeric variable there in the translated, I'd have a red X to signify my test will fail. These tests can now be fully integrated into the validation report, into automation, and they appear as the user translates as well for automatic online validation. So we've talked about scalability, we've talked about maintaining quality. We also need, in this rapid time to market world, we need fast, reliable engineering. So Catalyst 10 significantly enhances search. We have, for example, refined searching. So I can do, perform a search and then perform smaller and smaller searches just operating on the result set, which is very, very powerful. Of course, I can also do things like regular expression, find and replace, which you won't have in other systems. I mentioned at the beginning as well about automated locking. So based on an ID, based on a segment's ID or a segment's text value, I can, in an automated way, apply locks. Of course, I can individually lock segments by manually selecting them, but what's nice to ensure that I can accelerate my localization process is to be able to identify through regular expression or through complete IDs, I can lock different pieces of text. Okay, so based on this has defined, if you see here, I have the ID powered by has been locked, so I can see anything containing an ID powered by gets locked. Also, there is a piece of segment that anything ending in a ... in this case has been locked. So very flexibly, I have been able to lock anything that I believe for my localization process needs to be locked. We also talked about visual reference and it being always available. So, of course, things like HTML, topics or dialog screens or menus have built-in visual display. But it's often the case, maybe for things like embedded software or for games, for some certain apps, it's often the case that um, visual information is not present in the file. So this is a text file, for example, that has a number of segments. It's a text file for an app, and in this case I've got the word Alchemy Translator. Now Alchemy Translator sounds like a person, the person who works at Alchemy who is a translator. Now if I'm to translate that, I'm in this case likely to get it wrong, because that's not actually what this is. It's an app. The Alchemy Translator is an iPhone app available on our website, but the translation of Alchemy Translator needs context before the translation can be correctly entered. So in this case, we've associated the context. We have added an image to explain to the linguist just exactly what that segment is, and as soon as they select the segment they see the image, meaning the translation can be done right first time. And right first time is what Catalyst is all about. It improves the quality, it improves time to market. These images can be present alongside a Catalyst project, or they can indeed be hosted online, meaning that anybody in the world can see the images. So we've talked about a number of the highlights of Catalyst 10 from a feature point of view, but it doesn't stop there, because from a format point of view we've also added a bunch more formats for Catalyst 10. Obviously mobile is a big thing, and Google Android is natively supported, so the Android format, the APK, Android package format is natively understood in Catalyst. You just drop one of the apps from your iPhone, from your Android phone onto into the Catalyst environment, and it can be readily localized. iOS applications also fully localizable within the Catalyst environment through source localization, and Windows Mobile. So Windows Phone Mobile is all readily accessible there as well within the Catalyst environment. What we've also found is that there's a lot of development managers who need to kickstart localization, and without necessarily needing to fully understand the ins and outs of what needs to be localized, they want to deal with the files they're used to dealing with. So from a Visual Studio point of view, all of the projects such as C#, VB, C++, any of those project formats can just be dragged into Catalyst. You don't need to go and identify all of the source pieces of text to be localized. Just tell Catalyst about the project and Catalyst will do the heavy lifting. Catalyst will identify all of the localizable pieces and generate a localization project for you. The same is true with Madcap Flare. If you take a Madcap Flare project, there's an FL proj at the highest level, but it defines the location of many of the native file formats. And the same as Visual Studio, here you simply insert the project into Catalyst. Catalyst again does the heavy lifting. It identifies all the localizable pieces, generating a localization project for you in a very fast and reliable way. So that's some of the features. We talked about some features, we talked about some formats. We also mentioned at the outset about sharing knowledge and industry knowledge. Well, how does that fit in? Well, we talked about the number of file formats, lots and lots of file formats going through Catalyst in a unified way, but we've opened it. It doesn't stop there. Rather than simply understanding the parsers that are located on your desktop, Catalyst can now go off and examine within the cloud for any available parsers. If we can identify a parser in the cloud, we can pull that down and make it available to you on your desktop. And the idea here is that our support department will host some parsers. So if one person has a difficulty with the parser and we generate a parser for them here, we host that, meaning it's available to everybody else. And what we're encouraging is that users are submitting their own parsers. So rather than me writing a .cpp rule and somebody else writing the same rule and somebody else writing the same rule, as soon as I've written it, it's available for the next person and the next person, meaning that they start from a more advanced position. And if they submit some, then I can benefit from their parsers as well. So really, this feature is about advancing the industry. We all move forward faster, starting from a more advanced position than we otherwise would. In addition to parsers, other aspects of the product have been completely opened as well. So the validation tests we talked about defining can be hosted. If you define a validation test for, let's say, a telephone number or an IP address or a HTTP reference, for example, if you host that rule, it's available for others and we all move forward together. Same with pseudo languages. Catalyst, previous versions of Catalyst used to come with about 4 or 5 pseudo languages, typically Western European. They're all it's completely open now, where the pseudo translate expert will look online for available languages, and there's an unlimited number of languages available right now. As well as the parsing and the expert technology, there's some new global link product integration within the product. So we can now perform online review within a browser. So Catalyst content can be pushed up to a web browser for online review. And also our terminology. We talked about term harvest. Well, all of our terms, anything we generate, can be hosted online, meaning anybody in the world can access and use our content as within the localization process. So if we go back to the design goals we set for ourselves, we have identified features which meet these goals, and we're very excited about bringing this release to market. We really have some features that increase or reduce, or at least enable a rapid time to market. We maintain linguistic quality even in a high volume localization environment. We're enhancing and harnessing the power of community with our cloud links, and as always, we'll increase the file format footprint, making bringing the significant power of Alchemy Catalyst to new environments such as software development projects, mobile, and help authoring environments. Okay, presentation by myself, Enda MacDonald, co-founder at Alchemy Software. I don't know if you can read that there, sorry about the drop shadow on the text. endamacd@alchemysoftware.com is my email address, or contact anybody at Alchemy via the info line, info@alchemysoftware.com. Okay, thank you for watching. I hope you found this presentation useful. Thank you.